Welcome to the Beginner ADA course. What this course is going to cover is Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. And then we're going to cover how to set up our ADA tools inside of Adobe. And we're also going to cover an external ADA tool called NVDA. And then lastly, we're going to cover some steps to take for remediation inside of Adobe Acrobat. And then we have some optional material such as scanned remediate fillable documents, strikeout modified, and redacted material. First things first is we're going to cover Word, and we're going to cover inspect and fix accessibility issues. All right, working down this doc. So first thing first, we're going to open up our check accessibility tool. So we can click on review at the top and click on check accessibility, and this will open up the accessibility panel on the right hand side. There's another way we can do this. We can click on file in the top left, go to info, check for issues, and then check accessibility. Both of these options will accomplish the same thing. So first things first, what I want to do is start from the top and work my way down. At the top of the document, I have an image. Images are going to always need alternative text. So what I'm going to do is confirm that this image has an alternative text and to confirm it's the correct alternative text. To do that, I will go ahead and select it, right click the image, and at the third from the bottom there's a view alt text button, and it'll bring up the alt text box on the right hand side. Over here it'll say that this image has an alternative text of the Great Seal of Nevada, which is exactly what I want. So I know that this image is accessible, and I can go ahead and move on to other points in this document. So go ahead and click on the X. Next thing is I want to make sure that our header has applied a heading 1 to it. And to do that, I can go ahead and click on the header. And on the home page, there should be a styles section. And here you can see if there is a heading 1 style applied to it. If there isn't, you can go ahead and create your own, or you can use the default one that is used in Word. If you wanted to create your own, you can go ahead and click on this little icon box at the bottom right, and it's going to bring up these styles, in which you can click on the A plus or the new style button in the bottom. And then from here, you can name it however you'd like. I'll just name this custom heading 1. I'm going to keep my style type as paragraph. I want to make the style based on heading 1. And then in the formatting, you can format it however you see fit for this document. In this case, I'll make it like a blue. And then I'll click OK. And now I have a bluish header. To make sure that this is a heading 1, we can go ahead and click on Review, click on the drop down from Check Accessibility, and click on Navigation Pane. From here, you will see that there's a grouping now for Information Technology Advisory Board. And inside this grouping, we have a heading 2 named Agenda, as well as another heading 1 of Notice of Public Meeting. The reason I know that these are heading 1s is if they're grouped, or even in the styles, it'll show you whether or not it's a heading 1 or it's a custom style attached to it. So moving on is going to be this yellow string of text that we have down here. This is a big issue when it comes to assistive technology, or rather when it comes to disabilities, because people with color deficiencies aren't going to see it that well. And not only that, but like this isn't very visible to someone without a color deficiency because it's bright yellow on a white background. So what I'm going to do to check this is I will go ahead and highlight it, choose the text color icon, go to more colors, go to custom, And then in the hexadecimal, I'm going to go ahead and copy this code. Now you can bring up a web browser and go to webaim.org. And in the search bar, we can go ahead and click color contrast or type in color contrast and press enter. It'll take us to a free contrast checker where you can just input in your colors and it'll check the color contrast for you. So I inputted the text color in my foreground, and the background is white, and it's already set to white on this color contrast checker, so I go ahead and press enter. As you can see, I get a 1.07 to 1 ratio, and it fails every single one of my WCAG standards. The goal for using color in text is to pass AA, but we would like to see AAA. AA is required, AAA is a styling choice. So in order to pass AA, I can just go ahead and slide down this luminance. And as you can see, I passed AA for only large text and graphical objects and user interface components, but that's not what this is. So I'm going to keep dropping it down until I can pass with normal text. And I only passed AA at 4.88 to 1. And it's also changed how bright this yellow is, and so it's slowly turning almost into like a brownish color. Now if I wanted to pass AAA, I'm going to have to slide this further down, and only at 7.03 to 1 do I get a AAA pass. But now this is a lot darker than the original start color, and not only that, but a lot darker than the AA passing color. If I wanted to input this color back into my document, I can go ahead and take the hexadecimal value code, copy that, go back to my Word document, and paste it in the hexadecimal code here, and press enter. And this will change the color, and it'll also get rid of our issue that we had in our accessibility panel. Now, when it comes to tables, we want to avoid using complex tables because complex tables makes it harder to read for accessibility tools such as NVDA or any sort of tool that will read the page or your screen. The difference between complex and simple tables is just as you see here, where we have rows or columns outside of the scope of a header. And by this, I mean the 2016, 2017, and 2018 are going to be your headers. And then your row 1, 2, and 3 are going to be your rows that fall underneath these headers. In the first row, we have a merged cell. So we need to split this into 2 columns, one for 2017 and one for 2018. A quick tip is if you were to drop down this accessibility issue inside the accessibility panel and then click on table cell, it'll give you a recommended action where you can split cells. It's going to ask if I want to merge cells before split. I'll click OK, but the biggest thing we want to see here is the number of columns. We want to make sure it's 2 in this case because it's splitting this into 1 column for 2017 and 1 column for 2018. And then we can go ahead and click OK. And it passes that issue as well. Lastly, we have this merge or split cell in the 2018 column. So we want to merge this to make sure it's 1 cell underneath the 2018 column. We can do this manually just by highlighting both the cells, right-clicking, and choosing Merge Cells. And that'll pass those issues. Last thing we want to try and do is to make sure that this document has a title. And to do that, we can go ahead and click on File, Info, and in the Info Properties box, there should be a title area where we can input a title. In this case, I just want it to be example document. Now, the difference between a file name and a title or a document title is that the file name is completely separate from what the document title might show. And when it comes to readers, they will try to read the document title over the file name. And not only that, but the file names are sometimes more useful for the people putting these out on the web than they are for the people reading the documents. So it's a good idea to get a small summary or a short summary of the document in the title. So now that I know that most of this is accessible in at least Word, I can go ahead and export this to Adobe. There are two ways we can perform an export to Adobe, one of which is by going to File, Export, create PDF/XPS document, and then lastly, create PDF/XPS. The reason why we do these two specific ways is because these will preserve the most formatting and will preserve almost all the changes that we have made to the document, so that when we export it over to Acrobat, it'll keep most of those changes and most of those accessibility changes, most importantly of all. The second way is if you have Acrobat Pro DC, we can go ahead and click on this Acrobat tab at the top, go to Preferences. In the Preferences, we want to make sure that it's View Adobe PDF Result, Prompt for Adobe PDF File Name, Convert PDF Document Information. We want to make sure all three of those are checked, as well as create bookmarks, add links, and enable accessibility and reflow with tagged Adobe PDF. Once we have all those checked, we can go ahead and click on Advanced Settings. In here, the only thing we're going to change is the compatibility. We want to change it from Acrobat 7.0 to Acrobat 8.0, the most recent version. And then once we click OK, it's going to ask to save these settings to Adobe. So what we want to do is we do not want to change the location of which this is being saved at. However, we can change the name if we would like. So if I wanted to change the name, I don't know, to ADA settings, I can totally do that. But I already have them saved as standard one. So once we have our settings saved, we can click OK. And then all you have to do is create PDF. Luckily with this option, you only have to set your preferences once, so you can always just come up to Acrobat and then create PDF when we are done with this document. It's going to ask you to save as a PDF, and if you hadn't saved it as Word already, it would ask you to save that too. And then this is what it'll look like in Adobe, where we have all of our changes. Moving on to letterheads. Sometimes we'll have letterheads that are images, such as this one right here, where we have an image for the entirety of the letterhead, when this isn't actually supposed to be this way, because we have this readable text, one for the governor, the director and administrator of the department, and the department information itself. So I will walk you through how to create your own compliant letterhead. Again, these are only options to create this specific letterhead, but you are free to change these settings however you may like, just as long as the letterhead stays compliant. So first things first is I'm going to go to Layout. I'm going to change my margins from normal to narrow. And then I'm going to set my columns from 1 to 3. I'm going to change my spacing to 0 point. And then I'm going to click on columns again, go to more columns, and in these columns I want to uncheck equal column width. And then from here I will set these widths and spacings myself. So one of these widths is going to be 1.5 inches with a spacing of 0. This second column width is going to be 4.3 inches with a spacing of 0, and then the third one should set itself to 1.7. Once we have all that, we can click OK. And then from here, we can put in our information that we have for the letterhead. In this case, the first piece of information is going to be the current governor. And we're going to go ahead and center that information. And then next, to get to the next column, we can go ahead and click on Breaks and choose Column. And this will take us over to the middle column, where we can go ahead and put in our seal. And I'm also going to make that centered. And we're also going to add in our department information. Also make that centered. And then once we have all that, we're going to move on to our right column. So I go ahead and go back to Layouts, click on Breaks, and click on Column. And in here, we'll put in our department heads and also set these to centered. Now, if you didn't have the breaks tool included in the page setup, you can go ahead and right-click on an empty space in the ribbon, click on Customize the ribbon. Inside here, we're going to change the from popular commands to all commands. And then we're going to scroll down until we can find the breaks tool. Once we've done that, we can go ahead and just create a new group and add this to that new group and then click OK. And as you can see, we now have this new group added of breaks. And this would be a compliant letterhead. But first things first, we want to check for accessibility just to make sure. And good thing we did, because now we have to verify the description of the Great Seal of Nevada. So go ahead, you can either right click on the image itself, or you can click on verify description inside this box. And then we can change this information in the alternative text box to the Great Seal of the State of Nevada. And there we go. Now we have a completely compliant letterhead. If this text for these, if the blue color for these texts didn't pass, it would also show up in the accessibility panel, but it does. Moving on is to Excel. First things first, again, we want to check for the accessibility. And while we're at it, we'll also go ahead and check the document title. And we'll just name this example sheet. So in this case, I'm just going to go down the list of the accessibility panel. So first things first is reviewing description for alternative text. When it comes to graphs, we like to be as detailed as possible, but unfortunately, the alternative text won't support how much text it would be required to accurately describe this graph. So what we're going to do instead is we're just going to give it the title that the graph has, which is being legislatively approved operating appropriations compared to the spending gap. And then we can close that and it'll pass that issue. Same thing with the next image. Go ahead and open that up and then add in the title of the graph. Then we can close that, and there goes all of our missing alternative text issues. Next is going to be this missing table header. All tables are going to need a header, even inside of Excel. As you can see, we don't really have a heading for this table that it highlighted. We just have these dates on the left-hand side, and then these numbers that correspond with them. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this recommended action for adding a header row. And I'll add in this header row where we can put in more information to more accurately describe this table. You could also do this by highlighting the table, going to table design, and then clicking on this header row at the top and making sure it's checked. Next is use of merged cells. We're just going to do the recommended action. We're just going to unmerge this cell, and it'll solve that issue. Every sheet is going to need a unique sheet name. The default is not going to be appropriate for accessibility terms. And you can change this by either using the recommended actions of rename sheet, or you can double click in the bottom left for the appropriate sheet that needs to be renamed. In this case, sheet 1 needs to be changed. I will just name this, we'll name this graph 1, because it only has one graph. And then press enter, and it'll pass that issue. And then lastly, we have hard to read text contrast. Same thing with Word, is we can't have this brightly colored text on a white background, otherwise it may be a little too hard to see. In this case, I don't have to go to WebAIM to fix this issue. I can just stay over here, and I'm just going to make this a darker red, and it'll pass that issue. I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. Change the font color to what I have it set to with the rest of them, and there goes all the issues for Excel. Now, if I wanted to export this, again, you can go to File, Export, create PDF/XPS document, and then create PDF/XPS. The Acrobat settings to also save this are going to be View Adobe PDF result, prompt for Adobe PDF file name, and convert document information. We also want to make sure that create bookmarks, add links, and enable accessibility and reflow with tagged Adobe PDF. Fit to paper width and prompt for conversion settings are all checked. The reason why we do fit to paper width instead of fit worksheet to a single page is because it will just squish this information that may be a bit wider than the Acrobat's page, just so that it can flow down on multiple pages. However, if I were to fit this worksheet to a single page, it will squish all of this information on this one sheet onto one page, thus making it very hard to read or practically illegible. And then lastly, we're going to go to the advanced settings. Can change your compatibility from Acrobat 7.0 to 8.0, and then click OK. It's going to ask you to save. Same thing with Word. You can save it straight to the settings for the Microsoft Office applications. And then we can click OK. And then lastly, you can create PDF, and it'll export this to a PDF Acrobat. And then lastly, for the Microsoft Office suite, we have PowerPoint. Again, first things first, I'm going to go to File, Info, make sure it has a title, and then Review, check accessibility. As you can see, we have 4 issues with missing object description and 2 issues with checking of reading order. So we're going to go ahead and add descriptions for these pie graphs, which would be legislative approved general funds 2014 to 2015 biennium. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy all that information. This one's going to be agency request general. Actually, I'm going to close that, go down to picture 2, and we can just cut out all the general funds, close that. We can type in agency request general funds for the 2016 to 2017 biennium. Copy that information as well. And then we can just cut out general funds in this one. And then lastly, for PowerPoint, we have check reading order. So what's going to happen here is we're going to click on verify object order. And in each one of these, we will have a number given to each object inside of this panel. And we're gonna have it read top to bottom, left to right. So we want to make sure that title's at the top. Slide number should stay there because it's also at the top. And then as you can see, we skip past all the images and go straight to the text box at the bottom. So what I'm going to want to do here is I will want to move the corresponding picture above this text box by clicking and dragging and then dropping it right there. And then next, we're going to make sure the reading order stays the same. Text box reads right after text box, so we can go ahead and move this underneath the next picture. So now it reads title, slide number, picture 1, text box for corresponding picture, picture 2, and then text box for corresponding picture. And then that passes that issue for this page. We're going to run across the same issue for this panel as well. We're just going to go ahead and reorganize this information so that it passes that issue. Now, lastly, we're going to want to click on review at the top and make sure that our check accessibility is also passing. And then lastly, Acrobat preferences. For preferences, we want to do view Adobe PDF results, prompt for Adobe PDF file name, convert document information, and then we want create bookmarks, add links, enable accessibility and reflow with tagged Adobe PDF, and convert multimedia are all tagged. Again, in the advanced settings, we're going to want to keep it at compatibility of Acrobat 8.0. And then we'll click OK. And you can click Create PDF. Again, the other option is to go to Export, Create PDF/XPS document, Create PDF/XPS. Next thing we're going to want to look at is NVDA. So in the browser, we can go ahead and click on NVDA or type in NVDA. And if we just keep scrolling, we'll eventually find a download NVDA from NV Access. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. And in here, you can just keep scrolling until you find this download button. You can click on download and it'll automatically start downloading NVDA to your computer. I do recommend that you turn down the volume on your computer when you open NVDA, as NVDA can be pretty loud and pretty jarring pretty immediately. But because I already have it installed, I can just pull up NVDA over here. And as you can see, it's already starting to read just by where my cursor is hovering. So I will go ahead and pull back up a document, and then I can use my arrow keys to read out the information in the order I wish it to be read in. So it's going to start at the top, and then I can go down the page. And so on and so on. If I want to get rid of this, there should be a icon on your taskbar, and you can just click exit, and it will close out of NVDA, and you don't have to listen to it anymore. And then that's going to be it for the first 3 topics on the beginner course, which covered over Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, and then a little bit extra information on NVDA. Next is going to be these Adobe Acrobat versions, where it will go over all the differences between the Acrobat versions and what they can accomplish when it comes to accessibility. As you can see, Acrobat 11 Pro doesn't really have a lot of stuff it can do. All the ones in terms of accessibility are going to be highlighted, and it's also no longer supported. Acrobat Pro 2017 has a lot more that it offers than Acrobat 11 Pro, but it doesn't offer as much as Acrobat Pro DC. As Acrobat Pro DC offers basically everything it possibly can in terms of accessibility and working with PDFs. As a matter of fact, it has all these boxes filled. And so when it comes to accessibility, your best bet is probably going to be Acrobat Pro DC. And then that's going to be it for this portion of the class. Next is going to be Adobe Acrobat PDF. And the first thing we're going to cover when it comes to that is we're going to set up its Adobe's tools.